One of the things that I wish people understood about analysis is that this is actually a really creative process. Everything from writing the code to thinking about the models to how we visualize and communicate information is really individualized and is going to be unique for each analyst. And each analyst brings their own ideas and life experience to the ways that they frame all of that. So I think it's tempting in things that involve numbers to think about things as either right or wrong, like there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And it's true that there are good practices and best practices that we should engage in, but it's also true that this really is truly a creative process and that the way you analyze the data might be different from how the person next to you would analyze the data. And that's certainly true of programming. There are so many different ways of achieving any specific result in programming. So there are, especially in R, lots of packages that have different commands that have been programmed by different people. And some of those commands actually achieve the same thing. They just look different or use different words or syntax. The other thing is that, some people are going to use tidyverse and some people are going to use base R. Some people are going to really like the pipe operator. Some people aren't going to like that. Some people use loops. Some people don't. So there are a lot of different ways to have correct code. And what makes correct code correct as opposed to incorrect is that it achieves the result that you are intending. In other words, if you want a certain kind of output or expecting a certain operation to have been performed, correct code is any code that makes that happen. Now, that said, you'll hear people talking about like good code and not so good code. And it all may end up with the same like correct result in the end. And what they're really talking about is how quote unquote elegant the code is. So elegant code is going to be code that's easy to understand, that uses fewer lines of code, that is easily replicable. It's neatly organized so that it's easy to follow. It's beautifully annotated. There are a lot of things that make elegant code. That doesn't mean that code that isn't quite elegant or might be a little clumsier at first isn't still correct. So just understand that there are lots of different ways to do this. The other thing that I wish people understood was that Googling or using other search engines to find answers to problems in programming is actually part of the situation. Like as you're trying to learn how to make things happen with your code, and as you're trying to run different statistics, or maybe you're working on different data visualizations and you want to do something cool, or you're trying to like overlay multiple images on top of each other or change colors or whatever, you'll find that you have questions. Or sometimes you'll program something that seems like it should work and it's not working and it's throwing an error. Those are all cases where you want to use the worldwide community of R users to ask them questions, to search for questions that have already been asked, and to look at the myriad help pages that exist out there. You can borrow other people's code. You can code the way they have. You can use their solutions. And by far the best thing to do if you're running into a real problem that you can't figure out with your code and it just won't run, it seems like it should, is to take whatever error RStudio is throwing and to actually take that specific text, copy and paste it into your search engine and just search the text of that error. Chances are you're going to find someone else who had the same error and a bunch of people helped them resolve it. So you can look at their solutions and have real-time help all the time. These communities are also online a lot. So in addition to the web pages and the chats that you'll find, the discussion groups that you'll find online, you can also use live help, like through Twitter. There are a bunch of hashtags that our people follow, and people will swoop to your rescue and answer your questions if you use those hashtags well. So those are some fun tools that you can use. The other thing I'll mention is there are so many people out there who are answering these questions or asking them or helping each other out that you'll find you actually have a choice about which forums you pay attention to or which web pages you find most helpful. So every one of us thinks a little bit differently. Our personalities, our learning styles are all a little bit different. So I would really encourage you sooner rather than later to get used to searching for help, because as you find people whose explanations make sense to you, or who are good at solving the kinds of problems that you're running into, or who are running the same kind of code that you're interested in running, The more you find those people who are explaining it in ways that communicate well with you and your personality and your learning style, the more likely you are to get the help that you need. And the more you do that, if you find yourself clicking on some of these pages over and over and over again because they seem the most helpful, that'll actually teach your search engine how to prioritize information when you're searching, and it'll make your searches more and more efficient as you move along. If you constantly like spend more time reviewing the information on certain sites because it's making more sense to you and it's helpful to you, and that's where you tend to click, those will start to bump up in your searches so that that's what you get first, and it makes everything more efficient. So the sooner you can get into the habit of Googling your questions about programming, the more effective the whole system is going to be in supporting you in your programming journey.